IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to All Things Policy. My name is Rohan Seth, and if you're a frequent listener of the podcast, you might know that I talk and read a lot about technology. Now, generally, a lot of the reading that I do sort of doesn't always make sense to me. And so the person who I routinely reach out to sort of help me make sense of everything I'm consuming is Mihir Mahajan, who is also here on the podcast. Mihir is also a faculty at the GCPP Tech and Policy program at Takshashila. I'll put a link to the course below in the show notes. But it is my privilege to have him on the podcast today. Speaking of such things, the applications for the GCPP Tech and Policy program are now open. So if you would like to learn from experts such as Mihir or Krish Ashok or Nitin Pai or Pranay Kotasthane, you can head on down to GCPP Tech and Policy at Takshashila, and you can have a conversations like this on different topics, including feed algorithms, which is sort of a great segue into what I want to talk about today, Mihir. Welcome to All Things Policy.
Thank you, Rohan. Glad to be here, and can't say that I have not learned. I can definitely say that by attending some of the GCTP sessions, I have learned a lot of good things and cannot recommend the program highly enough.
Awesome. So let's talk about what we're here to talk about, algorithms, right? I want to begin this conversation by sort of talking about a more pre-internet era of the 1990s. Or the nascent internet era of the 1990s, because I still get newspapers today, and they sort of seem like a relic from that era. By which what I mean is that you get like 16 sheets of paper with news curated by journalists that do actually a fantastic job, so props to them. But it's the same paper for everyone, right? That's how people used to consume the news. That's how people used to process information around them in that era. That is not the case anymore. So for example, when I have to consume the news, go to Twitter, and news is selected for me. There is no journalist that's actually doing the curation, no editor that's actually doing the curation. Instead, it's just an algorithm doing that. And I think that has second order effects that have been talked about widely enough, but I don't think they're appreciated as much within a lot of circles that I actually tend to frequent. So our information diet is curated for us, and that's a problem. Mir, tell me, what are feed algorithms, and let's take it from there.
Sure, that's a great question. So, if you see, Rohan, most of the platforms that we use to access content, whether it's text, whether it's audio, whether it's video, whether it's news, whether it's applications that we buy, music that we listen to, or movies that we watch, all of the content comes to us through a platform such as an Instagram for images, or a LinkedIn for our professional networking, or as you mentioned, Twitter. And then some of us who don't live in India also use a video platform like TikTok to consume a lot of entertaining and fun content as well. One of the things that all these platforms have is a user generated content, along with professionally produced content such as journalism that comes from newspapers or online media. And the problem that most platforms have to deal with is there is too much content. Lots and lots of users are constantly uploading videos to YouTube or TikTok. People are tweeting all the time. Even if you follow even 10 people, if they're tweeting all the time, there's a lot of content. So one of the things that the platforms have to do is figure out a way to make all that content accessible and surface the best content to their users. What they use for that is something called feed algorithms. So these are algorithms that essentially analyze the content that is available on the platform and select or personalize or semi-personalize it for individual users. So Rohan, for example, if you are on Twitter, the news that you see or the content that you see is a function of the people you follow and their actions on Twitter, but also more generally a user profile that may be constructed for you that shows that you are interested in topic X or topic Y. Whereas the content that is curated for me and some of the people you and I follow may be the same, but some may be different. So it's a function of what you choose in terms of whom to follow or what type of content you express interest in. And then the algorithm takes that into account, goes through the available content at that time, and puts it together as a feed. So on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, you might see as a sorted feed where you just go down, keep scrolling down and see one post after another. On a TikTok, you might see, or a Snapchat, you might see videos that just continuously play where the autoplay is decided by the feed algorithm. And on a Netflix or a Spotify or some other entertainment service, you might see recommended for you or play next lists, which are essentially again curated for you. And some of this personalization extends all the way to even to a Swiggy or a Zomato. The type of restaurants that they find new or noteworthy, or the type of cuisine that they recommend for you, which may be based on what you have previously ordered or what you have expressed interest in. So even there are these curation algorithms or feed algorithms.
Right. This sort of brings me to, I don't think this is a word I say often enough, but incentives. So I think in some contexts, these algorithms make a lot of sense. For example, while I'm watching Netflix, I would love to know what else I could watch if I have just finished watching, let's say, Rick and Morty, right? Because over there, the platform wants to show me what else it has to offer. And it's going to be a painful task for me to go through all of their titles and select the ones that I might like. So in that sense, the platform wants me to spend more time there, give them more money every month, and I want to be there because I want to watch more entertainment, because binge watching is great. But it's not always as straightforward, is it? Because algorithms, in case of social media, can actually have differing incentives, because platforms don't like, they want to maximize their profit, but at times it can come at odds with the interest of the user. So me talk to me about this ideal of profit maximization by platforms, and how it can be at odds, like, because if Twitter changes its algorithms or Facebook changes its algorithms in a way that users actually sort of are at a loss, or existing users which were already doing well keep on doing better, and new users with not enough followers don't do as great, how do you think that plays out in the case of some of these social media companies?
Rohan, that's an excellent question. Let me actually parse it out as classic public policy analysis frameworks will tell you. Is you have to first think about what are the stakeholders in all of these online media services that, or any online service that actually uses curation or feed algorithms. So primarily, there are at least three sets of stakeholders. There is the platform itself, whether it's a TikTok that provides videos, or whether it's a Spotify that provides media content, or whether it's a Twitter that allows you to exchange short messages or post content and engage in discussions. So the platform itself is operated by, in most cases, a commercial entity, and as a commercial entity, profit maximization is their motive. But we have to remember that it's not necessarily a short-term motive. Most commercial organizations will have a short-term motive in terms of their share price or their valuation, and therefore the short-term profits. But they also have long-term motives in terms of how the growth of the company is, and whether the company is going to be more and more profitable in the future. So sometimes companies will sacrifice short-term profits for long-term gains. There are also the second set of stakeholders involves the content providers. So on a TikTok, there are hundreds or thousands of video creators that provide content, and they benefit when that content is actually taken up and a lot of users watch it. Most content creators are interested in their content being appreciated, being watched, and eventually becoming commercially profitable. So content creators benefit when their content is distributed more widely and is surfaced, and quality content actually is made known on the platform. And then the third set of stakeholders is the users, like you and I in this case, where we benefit from having an enjoyable online experience. I mean, I'm sure you'll recognize that one fine day you kind of logged on to Twitter, and there was a tweet that actually made you laugh because somebody posted a joke, or there was a cartoon that made you appreciate some of the black humor that goes on in government offices, or there was a link to a book that made it to your 52 books for the year list, and so on. So your objective, whenever you use any of these platforms, is to maximize your own enjoyment, and that also has a short-term component. The joke makes you laugh out loud right there, and then the book recommendation enriches you in an entirely different way, and you are looking for all of those. So I think between these three stakeholders, there are objectives that can often be unaligned. So, for example, a platform that's based on advertising revenue and is trying to short-term profit maximize benefits from keeping you engaged at the platform for as long as they can by continuously showing you one after another piece of content that you're likely to find interesting, interspersed with ads that again kind of match your interests and result in click-throughs or purchases that you make. For example, if the book is recommended to you and the book recommendation works, the platform might gain from you clicking through to purchase it online. So platforms kind of benefit when they are based on simply ad revenue models. They benefit possibly from your engagement. Content providers benefit when their content is taken up, but it's a competition because there is a limited attention that users have. So content providers often will benefit from creating content of certain kinds that is more likely to be popular, but may not necessarily be in people's interest. So some of this content might include more kind of language that is inappropriate or content that is more exploitative of your emotion in some ways and so on. So again, that type of content can exist and does exist on these platforms, and the incentives there for the content provider, while getting their content to go viral or become popular, work, they may not necessarily be in the interest of users. And users, while they don't really have necessarily a particular goal, I think they do suffer when the platforms and content providers don't act in their interests. So, for example, if fake news or iffy news is surfaced more widely to users, I think there's longer term effects both on the user's own mindset as well as on societies. So, the fact that different stakeholders have different objectives means that the feed algorithms or the curation algorithms that are selecting content for a user or for a set of users essentially have to optimize against all three. The platform, if it tries to short term maximize profits, may lose users or may lose content providers. Content providers that create content that's abusive or bad in some way but popular may suffer in the long run if the algorithm takes that into account and reduces the popularity of their content. And users who kind of view content and give likes and so on may form favorable or unfavorable opinions about certain things, which again affect how things work. So feed algorithms have to. I mean, the short answer is feed algorithms have an unenviable job of trying to balance all these things and the impact that this content has on how society works.
Right. Let me. I think this has been an excellent demonstration on how good of a teacher you are, Mihir, because that really sort of gets me thinking, and sort of I want to talk about concerns, because in managing these three stakeholders, I think there is a case to be made about Reddit, right? And let me sort of begin with a personal experience, which is that for the listeners of this podcast who do not use Reddit or have not heard about it, it's it's a great. I don't want to recommend it here, but I think it's a pretty entertaining website to be on. The key reason I bring up Reddit is because not only does it have an algorithmically curated feed, but you can also sort of customize your own feed. So you have access to a couple of feeds plus the news, um, which is um, which is I think quite an experiment as far as these social media platforms go. And only recently, and I think this is an excellent example of what users know they want, and sometimes when users don't know what they want. So I ended up going to in the algorithmically curated feed, there was a post under a subreddit called Make Me Suffer, and I looked at a couple of images there, and they were quite traumatizing. I think it's something that content moderators do on a very regular basis, and it can actually have great impacts on your mental health. Now, I shut that app down as soon as I possibly could because my head hurt, and I think when this happens, when stuff like this happens, I mean, as a user, I don't know a lot about what this subreddit might hold, and the platform can make an argument saying that listen, you have the power to look at what you want, You can curate your own feed. Generally, you have the option to not have an algorithm do that for you. And so there is not a lot of responsibility that Reddit has in sort of the impact that it might have had on me. And I think that case can be, you can make the other case, because there are some users who actually do want to be on that subreddit and look at images that that can be quite painful to look at. So the whole point is that some users might want it and know they want it. Some users like me don't know what they were in for. And sort of that brings me to how much of responsibility would individuals have and how much of a responsibility would platforms have in a case where let's say if platforms have users make their own choices and not and feed algorithms play less of a role, and and how those decisions affect different content types and diversity. Right. So that's my very, very extremely broad question, Mihir. Do you have any thoughts in response to that?
So, Rohan, that's a very interesting thing that you should narrate that experience because I just very recently, last week, saw that Wall Street Journal actually did an experiment on TikTok where they set up mock accounts that were controlled by robots or algorithmically controlled, where the videos that the particular bot or the particular automated agent watched were selected by the Wall Street Journal based on, I mean, the kind of things that the bot was interested in were selected by the Wall Street Journal by assigning each bot a personality. So there could be different personalities, but the personalities were not known to TikTok. What they found is TikTok starts off every user with a selection of videos that are overall popular on the platform. But then TikTok kind of takes into account all the different parameters. This is very similar to all the feed algorithms, as the feed algorithms kind of first classify content into various groupings. So the content may be categorized on the type of content it is, audio, video, or text. It may be categorized based on what it depicts, based on what it contains, and so on. Then they match it to the user's demographics potentially. So those could be age or gender or location, those sorts of information. And then they personalize it for the user based on what the user has previously done on the platform. So this could be, for example, on TikTok, one of the variables they appear to be taking into account is how long did you watch a particular video. If you just swipe past a video very quickly and you didn't end up watching it, the algorithm might conclude or might take it as a signal that you're not interested in videos of that kind. And if you do that often enough for certain types of videos, then those videos may get suppressed in your personalized feed. So what happened is the Wall Street Journal assigned personalities to these bots, and the bots only watched videos that those personality types were interested in. And what they discovered is eventually, if they did that long enough for each bot, TikTok's machine learning algorithm that generates the feed figured out that personality and started showing videos of that particular type that the personality would be interested in. And a disturbing finding that they had was that TikTok has a lot of videos related to anxiety and depression and tendencies that are indicative of mental health issues. And the algorithm was able to kind of catch on to that and show those videos to users, to bot users that were kind of identified as that personality. And I think that has a very significant impact because here you have a person that may be suffering from a mental health issue like anxiety, and they are being surfaced more content that potentially worsens it. So for all the listeners out there, I mean, if you're interested in this study, we'll link to the Wall Street Journal video. It's a 15-minute video from the show notes. But more importantly, also keep in mind that your feed is algorithmically curated. It is personalized to you based on who you are and what you do on the platform and what you enjoy. And therefore, responsibility for what is in your feed doesn't necessarily rest only with the platform. It also rests with you in terms of how you behave. And Ron, to kind of come back to your question, I think users need to take that into account, and there are certain actions that we can do as users to make these algorithms kind of work better. While the algorithm designers have a responsibility, I think we also have some responsibilities.
That sort of is a very interesting segment here, and and I would say I have a lot more to talk about this. But let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and talk more about the responsibility bit.
Hey, everybody, let me tell you a little bit about what happened on the IBM Podcast Network this week. we've had some amazing stuff, right? I mean, like, I don't know if you're aware of the redoing or the rebranding of the Traveling Professors show. We called it now Smarter with Sid, with Siddharth Deshmukh. This week he examines Netflix getting into e-commerce, and will this affect how Amazon's dominating the space? Also, let me give you another quick hits to join up on. So on Cider Says, Cyrus was joined by Olympic equestrian Imtiaz Anis, and Nishan Budla from the Triangle Offense podcast showed up on Thursday's Cock and Bull to talk about the NBA Finals. On Nankari, Sadaf and Archie were joined by Keshav Chaturvedi of the Tere Mere Raste podcast. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet talked to Ashim Mathur from Dolby. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram to keep up with what's going on the network. And with that, let me also just finally thank our sponsors. They're what makes things possible. We'd like to thank CIET, Cred, Global Victoria, Bank of Baroda, Intuit India, and Lenovo. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to All Things Policy. I'm here with Mihir Mahajan talking about responsibility as it comes to feed algorithms. And I think that's a very interesting point that you make there, Mihir, that users have a certain amount of responsibility when it comes to stuff like this. And I think it's an evolving debate, not least because not only is the responsibility changing based on how algorithms evolve and adapt, but also because each platform has very different connotations, right? So for example, in TikTok, as you mentioned, a lot of responsibility sort of may lie with the user or may not lie with the user, depending on how the interface of the platform is, right? If the only choice that the user has to make is to swipe up or down, there may be less of stuff that they could do. Maybe they could add some filters onto stuff they want to see, or they don't want to see. Similarly, when it comes to Twitter, you can actually highly curate your feed depending on who you follow, who you don't follow, and so on, right? So do you think, okay, maybe this is a bit of a clickbaity question, but as far as platforms are concerned, where do you think the biggest challenge lies in curation, and why do you think that? Why do you think some, or do you think at least that some feeds might be harder to curate than others? Some responsibility might be harder to sort of live up to than others.
I think, Rohan, that's a very interesting question that a lot of technology companies or companies that algorithmically curate content otherwise are grappling with. There are no easy answers. I think if you think about as an algorithm designer or as a technology professional who works in this area, I think there are many challenges. The first part you have to understand is that all these algorithms are very data hungry. They need to know for them to work effectively. The algorithms kind of are watching you all the time in some sense. So, for example, you mentioned that Twitter kind of may curate a really good personalized feed for you. But how are they doing it is not simply based on just being able to identify good content, but also being able to match it to what you like. And in order to determine that, they necessarily need to know what content you liked, what content you shared, what content you replied to, which users you engaged with, what tweets did you scroll past, which links did you click and go outside of Twitter, and so on and so forth. And also, when did you do this? Did you do this in the morning? Maybe you like jokes in the morning and maybe you do your politics in the afternoon. So there are a lot of things that these algorithms look at. So they are data hungry. So I think the very first concern that platforms and algorithm designers have to think about is the user's privacy and what data they use, and whether that data, one, is essential to curate the feed, and second, does that mean that the feed gets over curated or so narrow that the user is not exposed to new things or diversity of content that actually they may enjoy, but instead is kind of trapped in a filter bubble. So one of the things is it's very important for algorithm designers to use a balance between exploitation of what they know about the user and what they know about content, but then also to provide serendipity or exploration. So allow someone like Rohan, who's a voracious reader of books, an occasional laugh by putting cartoons in his feed, or show Rohan content. I mean, while they know that Rohan lives in India, algorithms might be able to show something interesting that's happening in Morocco, or show some pictures of environments that Rohan doesn't live in. So that exploration or diversity aspect is very important in line with it. I think the other part is that the algorithm designers are caught in this weird situation where, because algorithms are essentially owned by the companies and their profit maximization motive, the balancing the different stakeholders at different times and also in light of new forms of content or new type of content that keeps emerging, is a really, really big challenge. So algorithm designers have to balance the user engagement or attention that essentially earns them their revenue, the content diversity that makes users happier and also prevents them from falling into these filter bubbles or echo chambers, if you will, and providing enough profits or enough engagement to the content providers so that they continue to produce high quality content that makes the platform work and that makes all the users happy. That keeps people producing videos on TikTok or contributing thoughtful posts on LinkedIn and so on. So, kind of trying to do all of that is a big challenge. And the other part is the algorithm designers have almost like an ethical responsibility, because the algorithm makes decisions on what millions of users around the world are seeing, whether it's videos, images, links, whatever it is. So there is responsibility to filter out content, Rohan, of the sort that you encountered on Reddit, at least if it's a curated feed and if the algorithm is able to take out violent content or violative content of the laws, or content of explicit nature or inappropriate for certain age groups. That's the default pretty much for all algorithms. But then there are borderline decisions that the algorithm has to make. So, for example, content that continually reinforces a particular political view, or content that continually reinforces a medical view that's wrong. For example, we have seen that algorithms have been blamed for some of the vaccine hesitancy that we have seen around the world, where certain times there is a lot of content on platforms that says vaccines are no good or vaccines may be potentially harmful, which is absolutely untrue. But the content tends to get picked up. So I think algorithms have the responsibility to make these judgments. And because algorithms are not essentially entities, the designers actually are responsible for some of this. And they also have to be robust to manipulation. So there may be content providers who figure out that algorithms are fooled by including certain types of things within their content, or by, for example, priming the pump is a strategy that certain content providers use, where they may make something, upload something, and immediately have 500 likes to it, which then kind of gets picked up by the algorithm and gets trended. And that's a marketing tactic, and algorithm providers have to kind of be robust to some of that. So I think it's a big set of challenges. There are no easy answers. There are platform specific challenges as well.
Right. I think as we approach the tail end of the podcast, I want to talk about the public policy issues over here and more about the regulation bit of it. I think, like, let me just
So let
preface this
me
by
let me
saying
come in,
that.
Rohan, there, right? From a policy
Huh,
perspective, I think there are four major concerns that I think we should think about as individuals who are subjects of these algorithms or these platforms. We should be worried that we won't see what we really want, in the sense that the algorithms will filter into specific domains that we have previously been interested in, but don't capture our entire whole self that we might be interested in. So we want to make sure there is serendipity and there's exploration, and new types of material, new domains of content are exposed to us that we may benefit from learning about. And then we also want to make sure that these algorithms filter out content that, are actually provide, make sure that we see the content that we need, don't filter that out. So things that are not necessarily immediately appealing, but that are in our long-term interest, things that challenge us or things that change our minds. So they may be things like politically opposing views. They may be things about financial responsibility. They may be things about even things like why social media is bad for us. For example, Twitter features a lot of content about why Twitter is bad for us. And that's a good thing, because from an individual perspective, we need the platforms to show us what we need, even if sometimes it may be unhappy or it may make us walk away from the platform for a bit. And then as a society, I think there are two major concerns. One is that through these personalized feeds, each of us has a different view of reality, a different view of what's going on around us. Then we don't have common reference points. So in the world of Doordarshan, everybody watched the same series at 9 p.m. and was able to kind of talk about it or relate to it. But with the explosion of content around us, there are no common reference points, or very few of them. And if algorithms kind of tend to over specialize and provide different feeds to everyone, then we as a society may lose common reference points. And then the second part is because of, and the related one is we might fragment into polarized enclaves. And we see some of that, right? We see that there are there are already fault lines in society that exist along various categorizations, whether it's language or religion or caste or age or any of these other parameters. And the more time we spend online pursuing specific interests and kind of being polarized in a particular direction, the more fragmented the society becomes into polarized enclaves. And that's not a good outcome at all from a public policy perspective. So I think these are the four concerns we should worry about. And then we should talk about maybe the design that kind of addresses some of these.
Right. So I think that's very, very well put. Talking about the design that, as you alluded to, there is a lot in my mind as to how a common design thing would work. For example, I think a good sort of segue is that a lot of data protection bills that are coming in, a lot of laws that have been made around the world, uh, they talk about consent and why and how it needs to be clear, and like what stuff it needs to have for the user to make an informed decision on their data, right? And that's sort of something that can be applied across contexts. So if you go to the Guardian's website, if you go to, I don't know, the sign up page at Reddit and so on, consent in how it's collected is fairly uniform, right? But these platforms in the service they provide are not uniform, right? So if you are to regulate a certain design element into these platforms, it may not necessarily fit. For example, if you've got something, if you've got reverse chronological order of feeds, then that might make sense for something like Twitter, but I don't think that's something that's going to make sense for something like TikTok, because these are very, very different services. And we also don't know who across the digital world these design elements might apply to. And I think that's sort of the more interesting challenge of our times. So talk to me about different forms of regulation. I can see that in the notes that we prepared, we've talked about algorithm audits, algorithm diversity, and UI features. But how do you think we begin thinking about these things?
That's a great question. So I think from a public policy perspective, if you think about the different concerns about individual as well as societal effects of curation algorithms, first we have to recognize that personalization is not inherently bad. It allows us to kind of tackle information overload. It allows us to discover content from the thousands of content items that are being uploaded. It allows us to discover the things that are fun and that are good for us and that we like. So I think accurate or good personalization is better than the unpersonalized or poorly personalized feeds. For example, the simple reverse chronological may just mean that you might get a massive overload of information or you may get duplicative content. On the other hand, a poorly personalized feed, for example, the Wall Street Journal's experiment with TikTok, might send you down rabbit holes that are not good for you. So we should recognize that personalization is not inherently bad. Simultaneously, we should know or we should insist that these algorithms be implemented responsibly, that they should not have hidden or partisan manipulation that favors certain types of content or certain content providers or certain political views or medical opinions or any of those kinds of things. So I think from an algorithm design perspective, if they're built for diversity, if they take into account both short and long term impact that they have on the consumers as well as on the business and the content providers, and then if they offer us opportunities to reflect on what we have consumed, those are kind of some of the attributes that good personalization algorithms should have. And I think regulators can kind of bring about some of this. And this is where I think regulation needs to catch up. And there's a lot of public policy thinking that needs to be done. But I mean, the broad contours are that the platforms need to be held accountable for the impact of their feed algorithms, for sure. The platforms need to be, or the feed algorithms need to be submitted to algorithm audits. So audits would kind of evaluate the feed algorithms similar to the Wall Street Journal experiment, but more broadly on some of the parameters we talked about. Does this algorithm generate diverse feeds? Does this algorithm take users down rabbit holes? Does this algorithm correctly filter out fake news? Does this algorithm provide a diversity of opinion on a particular topic where that opinion is valid and presents different aspects and so on? So algorithm audits can uncover some of these. We also need, I believe, algorithm diversity. So a single kind of entity controlling the curation on every platform may not necessarily be a good thing. So right now we have a LinkedIn that curates its own feed, and a Twitter that curates its own feed, and a Facebook that curates its own feed, and so on. But what if we had diversity of algorithms, that the content was actually available to different feed algorithms or different objective maximization algorithms, so that they could compete and we would have some level of control or choice, rather than being subjected to an individual platform's decision on what makes for a good curation. So that's kind of another approach that regulation could take. The last one, and this I don't think gets enough attention, and it goes back to your original point, is the newspapers with the 16 broadsheets that you get do a fabulous job of laying content out in a way that's appealing to you. So they are able to, if you read a typical newspaper, the front page will have a main headline, and they will have multiple secondary headlines, and they're all in different sizes or fonts and so on. And then each page is kind of allocated to a section. There may be a sports section, a science section, or a regional section that covers your city, and a state section that covers your state, and an international section. There's an opinion section. What it does is it kind of gives you a lot of diversity, but it also gives you organization. So you can focus on, as a sports person, you can focus on, interested in sports, you can focus on the sports page, but also get news about sports that you may not necessarily always follow. For example, local table tennis is actually a very interesting thing. Hundreds of people play table tennis or badminton tournaments in our cities, but coverage of that on social media is relatively limited. But local newspapers do a great job of it, and I, for one, am happy for that. So I think having those user interface features that newspapers bring in, the categorization, the highlighting, op-ed pages having opposing news placed next to each other, the sports pages covering local sports, the health pages actually putting up medical opinions from qualified doctors, but also having users' questions. I think the UI features in newspapers are amazing, and some of those could be replicated digitally. And that's something we should regulate for, potentially, or promote interesting user interface design.
Right. Thanks for that. I think I'm at a loss of words actually, but I strongly agree with you. I think it's a note that we should actually conclude on, because
Well, maybe there's one thing we should definitely do is regulation is way in the future, and it requires government action, and it requires a lot of policy work that needs to happen, and that can take substantial time. And meanwhile, we should, there are two things that we can do. One is that we can kind of try to do something on our own. We can, as users, we should watch what the algorithms are feeding us. That's very important. I think we should recognize that all the online content that we consume has some kind of an invisible hand of an algorithm that's curating it. So we should, as users, watch what the algorithms feed us. And then second, we should proactively choose our information diet. We should make sure it's full of quality and it's full of variety. We don't go down particular view. We don't take particular political positions or particular medical opinions or particular views that are entrenched, but rather get exposed to variety of views, variety of news, and so on. So in that sense, we can let algorithmic feeds be part of the diet, but then do the Rohan Seth model, spend half the day on Reddit and spend the rest of the day on reading a book. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think you have summed up my day fairly well over there. But yeah, I do agree with you. And yeah, I really don't have a lot to add. So thank you so much for taking the time here and for joining us and talking to us about some of these things. I'm sure our listeners appreciate it as much as I do. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always.
Thanks, Rohan. And I should say this again, that the GCTP program does a lot on ethics and technology, has a wonderful session by Krish Ashok occasionally. And I talk about some of these topics as well. So if listeners are interested in learning more about these, or even contributing to the policy work in this area, do look up the Takshashila GCTP program. And we'd love to have you as participants and speak with you more about these issues.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Come learn and experience the ABCDs of being queer with me, Shunetro,
and me, Farhad,
on our show, Gay BCD.
The two of us take you through our stories and experiences of being gay men in the city of Mumbai and have candid
and sometimes downright scandalous
conversations about sexuality, gay culture, and everything in between.
Catch new episodes of Gay BCD every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get all your podcasts from.